Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Indigo Women podcast. My name is Natalie. Welcome to episode 10. I'm so excited that you're here. I have gotten a lot of new followers lately, so I just wanted to remind you that if you are not subscribed on YouTube, following us in our Facebook group, or following us on Instagram, please feel free to do so. Our hashtag, the Indigo Women.
All the things.
All the things.
All the things.
So please make sure that you subscribe, follow, all that good stuff. Normally, I stream the recordings of this podcast episodes into our Facebook group. Today, I thought it'd be really fun to just stream it onto my profile because I have my best friend with me today, and I'm so excited to introduce her. Her name is Jill Borelli. She and I have been besties since we roomed in college for all 4 years. And I decided to call this podcast episode Breaking Down Walls because we were both art therapy majors. We both studied psychology, and we both thought that we were just breaking down all the mental walls. And so that was something we would joke about.
No idea.
No idea. So we were just breaking down walls, man. And today I wanted to invite Jill onto our podcast so that we can talk about breaking down the walls around female sexuality, sensuality, really connecting to our bodies, really owning our bodies, all that good stuff. And as you can see, even in her background, she has one of the paintings that I've done with a little bit of booty going on in there. So Jill is a boudoir photographer, and she is freaking incredible. You should definitely check her out. She's based out of Buffalo, New York. So if you need a little road trip to get some boudoir photography done, you should definitely do that. But Jill, would you please take a moment and introduce yourself?
Oh, thank you. Also, I get so many compliments on this picture. Like, so many people are like, where did you get that? I'm like, my best friend moved to Germany and she gave it to me before she left. And I'm like, I look at it every day and I'm like, Natalie. But hi, I'm Jill Borelli. Yeah, I've been a photographer full time for about 8 years, running my business. I've been doing it since we were in college, actually, probably so like 13 years, I think it's been since I started that. And yeah, I'm based in Buffalo, New York. I used to shoot like almost everything. And then through just like how life played out, I started focusing more into boudoir photography, and that's really where most of my focus is these days. So it's all about like empowering women, a lot of like delayering and kind of getting into like the more connecting with like our inner selves during our shoots, and kind of like getting to the root of our truths. And I know that sounds crazy, but there's a lot that goes into like our bodies, and it's been an incredible journey, and it's been so cool to like see all the things that have opened up. I don't know.
This is one of my favorite things about you and I. We consistently stay on the same wavelengths within our careers, even though we do different things. So obviously I do coaching and mentoring, you do photography, but we're constantly discovering things about higher self-consciousness and trauma integration and like becoming our most aligned selves, typically at the same times. Like we come to the same conclusions about life at the same time, and it's been that way for 13 years. So what I'm so excited about with this podcast episode is that I know you've been going through a lot of shifts in your career lately. And the last several times that we talked about how you could contribute to the Indigo Women. But in this conversation, I get to hear about what's going on in your world and in your career, and all of this really cool, deep work that you've been doing through the lens of photography, no pun intended. So can you tell us a little bit about that?
Look at you. Yeah, wow. So it's hard to like even figure out where to start with it. I guess like it started when I first, like my first ever shoot. I was working for a studio who I was like mostly doing like women or wedding photography through, and people started requesting like boudoir photography. So they sent me and this other girl out to do it. And I remember like being at that shoot and just seeing, not really knowing like what we were doing, like we were just winging it really honestly at the time, but like really seeing her come alive in a way that I had never experienced in any other types of photography that I'd done at that time, like her being in her body and her friends were cheering her on. And it was just like, I don't know, it was like a really interesting experience. I'm like, I want more of that. And I didn't really get a chance to for like a while after that because I didn't have a studio. I didn't have a place to do it. Like I didn't know what I was doing necessarily in my career, but like I was like, I always wanted to come back to that. So like I kind of started off like renting Airbnbs and kind of like knowing like when I would do them, it was like felt so good because there's something there. And I'm like, I couldn't really pinpoint it. I was like, I know people are feeling really good about themselves after this. Um, and actually it was like because of COVID, where like the wedding industry was like shut down, whereas most of my work was, the boudoir industry started like essentially booming because people were home. They were like, I feel like trying to connect with something somewhere. And, they weren't going on vacations. They weren't doing like these other big things for themselves. So like, I really saw this like huge influx of like clients that were wanting just to like, I think find connection in a lot of ways. And really up from there, like it just spun off, and it amazes me because now it's been, like quite a few years where like I'm seeing it more consistently and seeing the women, I can see changes like because it's been like long enough, right? So they're able to kind of come back to me and be like, yeah, that was actually like a jumping off point for me to doing something else. Because I think with boudoir, if it's an edgy thing, a lot of people, they think of it as like a gift item, but it's really like a huge gift to yourself because you're coming home because you're having to be, vulnerable, and like that feels edgy for so many of us. And like, I think it's kind of like, they're like, I edge myself in this way, like, where else can I like start, like, kind of like finding my, like out of like my comfort zone a little bit. So it's been really beautiful to see like people come back and they're like, yeah, that was a kicking off point for me to like launch my career, to like leave that bad relationship, to doing like, something different for myself, to like continue therapy or whatever it was. And I feel like was in especially the last 3 years, like really seeing that bloom has been, I mean, it's addictive for me because I'm like, this is so cool. Like everyone needs to be doing this, but really like seeing what like it really is doing in like the long term for people. So I don't know if I answered your question, honestly, but
Yeah, you did a great job. I love this because I'm aware of how important that embodiment component is in general, specifically with my background with yoga. And I
Mhm.
think that it's so cool that there's so many different ways that we can get into our bodies,
Yeah.
specifically in this way that is so sensual and vulnerable. And it has that component of like really putting yourself out there. There's a lot of mental prepping that has to go into a boudoir shoot. So I wanted to ask, like, how do you prep your clients for your boudoir shoot, and how do they tend to prep themselves for it?
Yeah, no, it's good. Um, anyone I talk to on the phone, typically I'm like, you need like at least 30 days before like I want you to come into the studio because I want you to feel prepared. I don't want you to, and there's people that come in quicker, and that's just sometimes like it has to happen that way. But I usually encourage people to like at least give themselves a month. Like if they can do like 3 months, I always like think that's even better because it is sort of a process. And we talk about it all on the phone, where like, there's lots of different elements. Like, of course, there's like wardrobe, which is like probably one of the bigger options, which is like, and I send them like a prep guide. Like the first thing actually I should say is like once someone books in, I send them emails like prepping them and like in order to come to the studio. So the first thing is like a welcome package where they're, like shown a lot of like different like lingerie or outfit options. And I'm like, go have fun with it. Like you might have never like bought anything like this for yourself, and like find like something that's for you. Like you don't have to wear anything that's uncomfortable. Like this is for you. Like you don't have to wear the craziest lingerie in the world, or you could be naked, like whatever like feels like your vibe, like go with that. And I think that's really kind of part of the process is like them like searching out for like how they want to like show up. The first time people come, I think it's like a little bit of nerves and they're like, I'm just gonna do what like feels easy. And then like the second time you're like, oh, you edged yourself. Okay, I can see like the change there. But I think the outfits like getting like that is part of the process. I also send them like meditations to do, like leading up to the shoot. So I give them a couple examples of that or where to find them in order to like kind of come back to the body. Um, Especially if they're feeling really like nervous about the experience. And they're like, I'm doing this, but I'm like, yeah, it's definitely not something I'm super comfortable with, but like I'm getting there. I want to. Um, so the biggest thing I tell people to like physically to do is to like stretch, because like that's going to start them moving their body in ways maybe if they don't do things like that, and drinking water and just like feeling healthy in general. Um, and one of the biggest things I've been telling people lately, especially like the deeper this work is to set an intention for their shoot. Because a lot of people, especially if they're like trying to do this for somebody else, I'm like, but come back to like, what's the intention of this? Is it to feel like beautiful, empowered, to like move through something? And I think that has been really powerful for people to like have that intention, or to even like maybe start thinking about like, why am I doing this? And like, what is this a part of for me? Because something I tell everyone, I'm like, this is just one part of the bigger puzzle piece of like support that you need. So like, I'm not that, like you got to do all the other things too. Like you can tell when people have done work on themselves and when they're like in different places in that. So I always am like, this is just one thing. Maybe you're still going to therapy. Maybe you're doing like, like training for like triathlon, or like doing something other that's big. This is just like one piece of that puzzle of, like tapping into the self and um elevating essentially, right? So uh the intention setting has been a big one. And I actually just launched a program, not even a program, but like where people can talk to me beforehand. They're called intimacy calls. And that's where we kind of go more deeper, where I do journaling prompts with them, depending on how much time is in between the shoot and the calls. We talk about intention setting. And then I also give some other tools to kind of like get more into the body, like emotional expression exercises and like different things like that, where they can um start to feel even more comfortable with themselves, because the more comfortable they can be coming in, like the deeper that they'll be able to go like in their photo shoot. So there's been a lot of changes too as the years go on, of like I know what more support they need after a while. So it's been really
Yeah. I think
yeah.
that the intention setting part of it is so important, especially because you said like traditionally, I think that boudoir photography does tend to be focused on as a gift, but
Yeah.
it sounds like recently, at least in your circle and from what you've told me, a lot of women are using it as a therapy, as a homecoming. And even the fact that you said a lot of your clients come back and do multiple shoots, what sort of transformations have you seen either while you're shooting someone actively or when they come back for their second or third shoot?
Yeah. Oh, it's been so cool to see that, honestly. Like I've had some clients I've shot like maybe like 4 or 5 times, and a lot of people are like on their second time around. And to see the openness that they come in with, and a lot of people will do it like as an annual thing. It's like a yearly, or like, every year and a half, 2 years. Um, and yeah, it's really, I don't know. It's like, it's hard to explain necessarily, but it's beautiful to see like how they are trying to edge themselves, but they're also like come in with like a deeper understanding of what this work is for. Like if it was originally for maybe a gift, like the second time is always like, I'm going to do this for me now. And I want to do something a little different. Excuse me. Um, and they have like a little bit of a different vision. It's something I've been kind of working towards, is like curating their ideas of like the woman that they're like, even stepping into. So like coming up with artistic concepts and allowing them to get like creative with wardrobe, and like I'm starting to dabble into like maybe doing more like on location stuff so they can, like step into that version of themselves physically. Like I did a little fun shoot with somebody, and I ended up like covering myself in gold, this like gold leaf. And it was like the most empowering feeling like I feel like a golden goddess. Like I am embodying this like person, by physically seeing myself as this being that I envisioned. And so I think that's a really powerful tool to like be able to like allow them to tap into creativity, because a lot of us don't do that like on a daily. And so to like give them the space to like fully be creative and in their bodies, it's amazing. And I think that's what you see a lot in like the second time around is like, first time is like kind of like, okay, we're gonna put our toes in, we're gonna see what happens. And then the second time they come in, like their wardrobe is different, their like mind is like, you can see their wheels spinning of like, that's what every time I say, like they are like, well, next time I want to do this. And I have consistently hearing that. So we actually started, I just started a membership program where people can do multiple shoots in a year, where they can, especially I'll tell you about the one girl that I recently started working with, and she like as soon as she saw my pictures, like I can't wait to see myself in like 6 months. And I was like, well, we can do that. And like you can also with the membership, like I support them along the way where we're doing more calls together, more intention setting, more like deeper work and journaling. So like when they do get to that second one, it's like, whoa, it's really not just about the physical body because your like energy changes, the way you hold yourself changes. And you see that in the pictures, the way you're showing up, the way you're like moving your arms and your body and like we're numb. Like I feel like if like so much of our society puts us in we're a place where like we're numbed out, and to like be able to see them come back to like movement and like their everything like is just so cool. And we do a lot of movement and they're posing and stuff too. I know we did a shoot so long ago and it was such a different experience now, right? Like it's so cool. It's just so cool. I get
I
so
think
amazed.
I think it's so incredible to be able to use a camera, to be able to use these pictures to really see the transformation within ourselves. Because one of the things that tends to happen with spiritually aligned, intuitive women who do a lot of work on themselves is that like we don't give ourselves credit for how far we've come. A lot
Yeah.
of a lot of us have this bad habit of always looking for, okay, well, I'm still working on this and I'm still focused on that. And this needs to be tweaked still. But actually taking time to take inventory of, wow, I've come a long way. I think it's really cool that you're giving women the opportunity to side by side compare. This is where my energy was 6 months ago, and this is where my energy is today. And showing up more confidently because of that initial photo shoot, that initial, going outside their comfort zone, having those moments of vulnerability, but then seeing how empowering or feeling how empowering that was, coming back later after having that opportunity to integrate it, and then having those photos to share. Like that to me, I think it's really, really powerful that you can physically show your clients their own transformations.
Oh man. Yeah. I just like got goosebumps you saying that. Like, yeah, it's documenting your progress. And like, yeah, you don't really see that transformation, right? So something that I don't know if we're going to touch on this, but like something I started doing kind of around COVID, it was like kind of accidental because I didn't have anyone to shoot with it. So I started doing self-portrait work, during COVID times. And like it was a really interesting process. And I started doing it even last year, like as sort of a therapy for myself, because I was kind of coming out of my own, like transformational journey or like going through like a big change in my life. And I would come back to that practice of putting the music on. Like for me, like there's a whole like ritual I do around taking self portraits, which is something I encourage people to do. Like, and I also like I had to get over my like stigma of like, oh, this like vanity of like this is weird, like people taking pictures of themselves, like, but it really was like a documenting of like where I was, and to like put the music on and to set up the camera and like light the candles, the incense, and all like getting myself in a vibe essentially, and then allowing myself to just like be creative without anyone else there. I would come out of that and be like, wow, I'm like, I got back in touch with myself. Like anything I was like feeling shame or like, like not good about with myself. Like I was able to like look back at those pictures and like, wow, like that, I don't know why I'm feeling like this or that way about it. And I think there's just like big thing in movement and like creating art, and you're creating art with your body, which is our biggest tool that we own is amazing. So, it's just like, it's crazy. It's good stuff though. And I think it is really supportive for especially women to, give themselves, I don't even like to say give yourself permission because it's like, just do it. Like, but like allowing yourself to be creative and get out of like what you're supposed to be doing or like whatever that might be, because it takes you doing something different to get a different result. And if this feels like something is like for you and it's kind of like, I don't know what that is, but it's there. Like I always am like, that means like you should probably go for it, you know? So I get that a
Yeah.
lot.
Dive
Mhm.
in and explore. I
Mhm.
really appreciated what you said about the ritual component of this, of lighting the candles, of turning on the music, of creating that space for yourself to be creative.
Yeah.
And that's such a common theme of giving ourselves that opportunity to come home to ourselves. Like there's so many ways that we can create ritual. That's such a huge part of the Indigo Women,
Mhm.
specifically within our Indigo Moon community, of like, we're creating rituals to go with the moon cycles. We're creating rituals to practice embodiment that goes along with the astrological signs or whatever energies are there. And what I love about the work that you do is that you also create that space for the ritual of preparation, you know, of getting ourselves, like doing our hair, doing our makeup, getting ourselves into this energy of divine feminine expression. And that can't be understated. That's something that unfortunately our society doesn't focus on very much. And I think that it could. When you look at a lot of ancient societies, there was so much emphasis on ritual. And I love that even within your practice of shooting boudoir, there's so much ritual that goes into it. Do you feel that that adds to the magic of what it is that you're creating with your clients?
Ooh. Mm. I like I'm getting so many goosebumps us talking about this, which is like my sign, like things are good. But I do. The ritual kind of created itself. I feel like through my own needs and what I was feeling like that my clients needed. So something I do with everyone once they're dressed and like makeup's done, because they all come in and get their hair and makeup done, which is definitely part of like I feel the getting ready ritual, like just women getting ready together, there's something about that. But like to like allow yourself to be, I mean, it's a vulnerable thing for someone to do your hair and makeup in general, right? Like to just like allow them to make you look different, like you're their canvas. And that's like, you don't get that often. Like who, I don't know who, not, people probably get that, but like it's a really luxurious experience that I think is shouldn't be a luxury. It should be like, we should like allow ourselves to have those experiences because they're necessary. Um, but once they're like, you know, ready and prepped or like, you know, ready to start taking pictures, we don't even take pictures right away. We usually talk. Like I always do a check-in with everyone of like, where are you? Like, where are you at? And some people open up and are like, listen, I had the day and whatever. And like, they have stuff that they really have off, like want to get off their chest. And some people are like, you know, they don't have that right away. And like maybe by the end of the shoot, they have like all this stuff come up for them. Um, so I always start with like a check-in with every client. And I know not every photographer probably does that. Like, cause I've shot with other people and it's a different type of experience. So I always do a check-in. I always like prep them. And the one big thing I like to tell them is like, this is your shoot. I'm just here to take the photos and I'm going to walk you through everything, but you are in control. Cause I think something, especially as women, we're not like, sometimes we want to just be led and then other times like it's important for them to speak up and say no to me or like you know like no one really does but like to you take ownership of this experience too and I think that's really powerful or at least to like give them permission to I think is really cool and something I do actually that I've noticed is really powerful as well as after the photo shoot's over we do a viewing party where they come in and they get to pick out photos and all this stuff and one of the big things with that is like they do have to say no quite a bit because like we're narrowing pictures down. And I'm like, I find so many women we have trouble saying no. And I'm like, this is a practice. And by the end of it, you're gonna be really good at it. And it's like you have to say no to stuff, right? And it's good to like be direct and be clear about what you want. And I think it's just like a really important thing that I didn't realize was happening until like recently, honestly. Like there's a lot of like good things that they're like learning about themselves and like practicing in this experience that I think really does kind of go into like their real life a lot. So it's pretty cool. It's cool to see. Mhm.
So how do a lot of women respond to seeing their photos? Like, can you think of any particular stories or any particular clients that just like had a very profound reaction to seeing themselves?
I mean, yeah, there's definitely been tears. There's been like, it usually leads to like a lot of conversation. I'm trying to think of someone in particular. One of my clients comes to mind because because she's done a lot of like self-development work. And so like she kind of comes to mind of like, because she's like, there's something I get like it, like a lot of the remarks of like this experience has like been really sacred to me. And I've like never put those kind of things together. And it's been really cool to see like that the women that I do connect most with are like seeking something that is more sacred and more like a more profound experience, I guess. And she was like, like I'm looking at myself and I want to like criticize, but I also am like so in love with like that like dimple or like this or that. And then like she's like, this is like such a homecoming for me and like a celebration of like a new chapter for me. And I remember that like that one is the first one that came to mind because I know she's like, it's people that we have a lot of deep conversation of like where they're gone through, what they're, transitioning into, because I do find a lot of people come here at like transitional points or like a year after like a transition and like a celebration. And so, yeah, I get a lot of that. I'm trying to think if there's anyone else that I like talked to recently that, gave me some good stories. I mean, the conversations are like always blow my mind of like how some of these girls that come in very shy and like, like not wanting to like do like they're just like it's like I don't even want to say shy, but just like apprehensive. And then they see their pictures and they're like, I thought I was gonna hate everything and ends up falling in love with it. Actually, there was another girl that came to mind too, and she bought all of her images, which I always encourage people if they're gonna go that route, like you might be like, I don't love this or I don't love that. But like in 6 months or a year, you're going to look at that photo so differently. And I had talked to her recently and she was like, yeah, there was a few pictures I saw and I'm like, oh, like, I don't know. Like it just wasn't for me. And she's like, yeah, even a few weeks after I was like, I don't know. I didn't like that about myself. And I'm like, that's not just the picture never changed. Your perspective changed. Your love for yourself changed. And I think that is amazing. And I'm like, can you imagine in like 2 years from now when you look at those and you're like, damn, I can't believe how like I was criticizing that version of or that person at the time. And so I think that has been really profound to see how people's perspective on themselves change because they're doing the work. They continue to do the work after their shoots. And I think that's why when they come back, it's even like a more like dramatic experience because they're seeing themselves over and over differently and coming back to their truth. So like their inner truth and my brand is Bare by Borelli. And like I even been coming home more to like that brand of like really how deep can we go? Like how much can we delayer to get like to our true essence of ourselves? And that's only kind of come even more recently of how connected this is truly.
It's so healing. Like even just listening to you talk about this, and I love that we can collectively heal through each other's experiences too, which is really cool. So even as you're talking about these other women who are seeing themselves as beautiful for maybe the first time, that's like hitting me in this space of, wow, we as women who unfortunately societally have been taught from a very young age to be extremely self-critical of our bodies, we have this opportunity to heal that. And there's a bunch of different ways to do that. But I love that you are doing it by showing them how beautiful they already are. There's something so special to that. It's like, you don't have to learn your body. You don't have to learn to love your body by changing it. You learn to love your body exactly as it is. And sometimes that just requires seeing yourself through someone else's eyes. Like, they get to see themselves through your eyes. And I think there's something about that, like, third party perspective of you being the photographer and catching the light at just the right angles in ways that they wouldn't see themselves just looking at a mirror. And I think that makes a huge difference of like, whoa, I didn't even know that I could sparkle like that.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it kind of takes away mm, maybe it takes a little bit of like the ego away because they're not having to do the work of like creating the image because they're like posing. And, I do a lot of like, I'm going to have you. I mean, I have them touch themselves, and like a lot of people don't do that either. Like, even just like gently, like touching their arms and things like that, where they're like starting to feel again. Right. And so, like, a lot of the posing I do is movement, and they're, like they have to kind of be connected to themselves. Like, of course, like there's more like technical posing that we'll do and edging them and like, their flexibility sometimes, but like, I think there is something powerful of just like kind of letting go of control maybe in it too, because we want to make sure things like, I think that's like when the people get the most out of it, they come in with zero expectations. Like, I'm here to just like do whatever almost, and just like kind of let go. Um, because so like we want to like kind of have control of our image like a lot of times, right? And to just like, I feel really lucky because people do trust in my, like, trust me. Like, I have to hold them essentially through this experience. And like, it feels really, I mean, I feel very grateful that they trust my vision and like trust the process of moving through this entire experience. Truly, it's amazing. And then half the time it's like the end, and like everyone, like, well, not everyone's naked, they're just naked, maybe. I'm not naked. And like, you can see from the beginning where they're like so shy and like don't even want to like, derobe, to a point of like, we're all just human, and you can just have a conversation with me and you're like half naked or whatever, and you're just who you are. And I think that it's so cool. And you can see that in like the hour that they're here, so uh yeah.
Well, I love it because you're also just the perfect person to be holding space like that. I think you've been holding space for me for 13 years and you're damn good at it. So I love that you're also doing that for your clients. It's a really, really beautiful thing.
Thank you. Thank you.
So if you could give anyone a piece of advice regarding getting naked in front of a camera, not including awkward selfies or like, let me rephrase this question. So
Okay.
if you could give
I know.
anyone advice in regards to a boudoir shoot,
Mm.
what advice would you give them? And the first thing that pops in my head, of course, is Moira Rose. Like, take 1,000 naked pictures
Yes.
of yourself. But
I
other
hear
than
that
that,
so often. Yes. Well, yeah. And I think something that just came up for me, like, to speak on is like, don't be afraid of your sensual or sexuality. I think we've been taught so much. And I was actually just having this conversation last night that we like have a fear of sexuality and sensuality. And it is like the most like probably dormant thing. And it's one of the more like human things that I could get to experience. And I think there is some like fear that was like, ingrained in a lot of us for a long time. And that this work really is like, it's natural for you to want to, it's natural for you to want to be sensual and sexual. And I don't know, I think that is something, and it's okay to be. I think that is like advice that we don't get, is that like it's good to be, and to be connected to those things in our bodies. Um, and I always say, like, whether it's this or something else, like if it's tapping at you, if it's like, if you're feeling like a little bit of an urge to do something like this, to do it, or to like start to look into it, to plan for the future. Because a lot of times I find for myself, like, if something's like pushing at me. It's like, it's there for me to either show me a lesson or it's going to open something up. It's gonna like, I feel like it's a key to unlocking something else. And so maybe this is just a key to unlocking something for you. And I think seeing it that way, instead of just like, oh, I'm doing this for someone else because like they're going to really like it. Like, I think trying to come back to like, what am I going to unlock from this experience? And that's like any experience, right? But like for me, I think that intention of that can really, really get you in touch with like the bigger reason you're like where you're going and your why. So I don't know if that helps.
I love it. That was perfect. Jill,
Yeah.
thank you so much. This was such a pleasure. I'm so happy that this happened.
Thank you for having me.
Of course. Yeah. So Jill, how can we find you on social media?
Sure. Yeah. So on Instagram and Facebook, I am Bare, Bare by Borelli, which is my last name, Barrile. It doesn't sound like it's spelled, so find me. And then I do have a VIP group, and it's kind of a long title that I'm working on, but I think it's Booty Party, Bare by Borelli intimacy sessions, essentially. So I can send you the link if you want that. But if you want to see my work, it's more, I would say Instagram's like a good spot for it. My Facebook got taken over by, I don't know, Facebook decided I shouldn't have a Facebook anymore. And now it's back. So that one's a little sparse, but it's coming back. So it's fine.
So what's your Instagram handle?
It's Bare by Borelli, Bare by Barrile.
Full
So many
disclosure,
acronyms.
you've been my best friend for so long, and I still stumble over how many R's and how many L's are in Pirelli.
You bet. I know I really shouldn't use my name, but I'm like, you know what? I think about like the big brands and I'm like, Armani, people had to learn how to spell that. I'm like, you know, these like ridiculous Italian names. So I'm like, you know what? I'm sticking with it.
It's a great name. It really is. Two
Yeah.
R's, one L.
2 hours, 1 L. Yes.
Someday I'll
Not like
figure
the
it out.
pasta. Not like opposite of the pasta. I guess. I don't know.
Awesome. I'm going to link Jill's social media in the description of this podcast episode, wherever you're streaming it from. And please, if you love this episode, if you want more of them, please make sure that you subscribe on YouTube. You can follow me on Facebook, The Indigo Women, Instagram, The Indigo Women, YouTube, The Indigo Women. You can email theindigowomen@gmail.com. That's the brand. Okay. So anyway, Jill.
Right at home. Right at home.
Yes. Jill, thank you so much. I love you to pieces. I'm so glad you were able to join us today, and we'll see you again next time.
Bye.
Bye.